Hello everyone! In the near future, Earth is attacked by alien invaders. Hordes of ruthless creatures march across the planet, destroying everything in their path. When almost all hope is gone, a peculiar series of events resulted in the emergence of exceptional soldiers among the human ranks. These men adopt abilities from the aliens that allow them to know the enemy's army's next move. However, to use such a gift, one must die, and not once. 5 years ago, aliens arrived on Earth. Their army conquered all of Europe except Great Britain. To resist the aliens, humanity invents special exoskeleton suits for soldiers. Even a fragile woman can use it to change the outcome of a battle. One of the suit's first testers, Rita Vrataski, aka Angel of Verdun,
was able to kill hundreds of mimics on only your first day in combat. Imagine an army of Rita Vrataskis.
Humanity owes her for securing their first victory against the aliens in Verdun, France, and for stopping them from crossing the English Channel. A decisive offensive by united human forces is at hand. Major William Cage becomes the company's volunteer recruitment officer. He arrives on a helicopter in London, where General Brigham informs him of the plan to land on the shores of Europe. Since heavy casualties are expected, Cage will be dispatched to the front line in the first wave to film a report on the heroism and successes of the army. Cage is not happy about the prospect.
While it is an honor, General, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to decline. Can't stand the sight of blood. Not so much as a paper cut.
Cage, who was in the advertising business before the invasion and has no military experience, is horrified and tries to object. Brigham says that it's an order, not an offer. William prepares to leave, but then stops. He says that he's convinced millions of men to join the army, and when the body bags with dead soldiers start coming home, he'll convince everyone that the general is to blame for this. His blackmail seemingly works, and Cage exhales with relief. But as soon as he's out the door, Brigham orders to arrest Cage. Cage tries to escape, but is tasered by the guards. While he is unconscious, he is taken to a nearby military base. He is greeted by Master Sergeant Farrell. Cage tries to explain that he has been framed and he's actually a high-ranking officer, but they don't believe him. The sergeant was told that Cage is a deserter and a liar who will try to impersonate a U.S. Army officer. Cage is handcuffed and taken to his new fellow soldiers, who will lead the rest of the troops into the battle tomorrow.
Envy you, Cage. Tomorrow morning you will be baptized, born again.
J-Squad is playing poker at this time, even though it's forbidden. For this, the Master Sergeant makes the soldiers eat an entire deck. He orders them to prepare the deserter for battle. Cage sees that the squad consists of rabble with poor fighting skills. They put on exosuits, though Cage has no idea how to operate it. He doesn't give up trying to sneak out and says he might accidentally shoot someone because he has no experience with the suit. A fellow soldier says that it's impossible because the gun is on safety. He never explains how to disable it. On his way to the dropships, Cage tries to escape again, but is quickly brought back into formation. In the plane, Cage tries to put his weapon into combat mode, but fails to do so. The sergeant also fails to give the soldiers landing instructions as a missile hits their transport airplane. In utter chaos, the soldiers jump from the dropship, which sends them spinning on the ropes. Cage falls on the beach, where he miraculously manages to survive, unlike those hit by the missile or crushed by the plane. He looks up and sees the legendary Rita Vrataski. Her suit is better equipped than the others, and she uses a sword to cut mimics in half. Rita is killed by a projectile in front of William. Scared Cage starts to run in the opposite direction, but is stopped by the sergeant. The survivors band together to attack.
You're not supposed to know we're even coming.
You walked into a slaughterhouse, man! It's a slaughterhouse!
The soldiers panic and push each other around. Suddenly, a mimic emerges right from under the ground. While the enemy eliminates the entire squad, Cage tries to make his weapon work. The Japanese language interface does little to help. By chaotically pressing buttons, he finally succeeds and fires a machine gun round, killing the enemy. Cage is happy, but a huge monster, which is different from the others, quickly approaches him. Cage tries to shoot it, but the machine gun is no longer loaded. The clip fell out when Cage dropped to the ground. Cage grabs a mine, which he finds nearby, and manages to blow the alien up. The explosion blows the alien's head off, but its blood spills over Cage, and his eyes turn black. He screams in agony, and immediately wakes up on the luggage near the plane the day before the battle. The Master Sergeant meets Cage and leads him to the squad. Cage tries to understand what's happening to him and shares his hunches with the sergeant, but the latter doesn't listen to him. All events unfold exactly as they already have, except that Cage remembers the previous day and can predict what's going to happen up to a certain point. After the landing, Cage tries to warn his fellows of the dropship fall, but they still fail to do something about it. On the battlefield, he sees Rita again, but this time he saves her from death. but gets stabbed in the chest. Instead of saving the man, Rita takes the battery from his suit, and the mimic finishes Cage off. Groundhog Day continues, and the time traveler tells the sergeant what a private couldn't have known.
And if you'll give me 30 seconds to explain how I know that, you may just save the lives of every soldier on this base.
The strange deserter is still dragged to J Squad by force. Cage yells that they're all doomed because the enemy is expecting them, and then calls out the names of all his fellow soldiers and the combinations they had when they were playing poker. For this behavior, they shut the mouth of the unruly private with duct tape and send him into the battle like that. On the beach, he finally figures out how to save his fellow soldier from a falling plane, for which he immediately pays with his life. Cage dies hundreds of times to ensure the best possible outcome of the battle. He tries to get through to Rita Vrataski to work with her and retreat. He surprises her by easily deflecting all the mimic's attacks.
Come on! The ship is going to explode! What are you doing?
Find me when you wake up.
William is confused to hear that, and the explosion kills them both. This time, Cage helps his fellows escape punishment for gambling and acts as friendly as possible. Along with everyone else, he goes out for a run and provokes the sergeant to punish the squad with push-ups. It takes Cage 2 attempts to roll over under a nearby truck and sneak away. He finds Rita, who's busy training, and she immediately realizes what's happening to him. She experienced the same phenomenon at the Battle of Verdun, but lost her ability to restart the day. She introduces Cage to the doctor who helped her before. The scientist has studied the mimics and concluded that they are like limbs of a single organism that is controlled by the Omega brain. It is this creature that knows how to control time and rewinds it when the rare blue mimics called Alpha die. This is how the invaders always know the future and can't lose the war. The Battle of Verdun was only won because Omega allowed it in order to trap human forces. That trap will be closed during tomorrow's offense in Europe. But since Cage managed to destroy one Alpha and was exposed to its blood, he has become part of the alien's nervous system. So there's a chance for mankind to win. When Rita got her powers, she started having visions of Omega's location.
The Omega senses when it's losing control of its power. Even now, it's mentally searching to find you.
Unfortunately, Rita failed to get to Omega in time to destroy it. In the last battle, she was badly wounded and had a blood transfusion. It's the blood that carries the ability, so Cage can't afford to lose the precious liquid either. If he's wounded, he must take his life and restart the day. But Cage hasn't had any visions yet, so they have to wait. In the meantime, they get busy training Cage in the exosuit, so that Cage and Vrataski can get to the Omega together and win the war. Cage is not particularly good at training. Drones imitating the mimic's behavior knock him down, and Cage breaks his spine. Rita doesn't wait for him to be sent to the hospital and kills William. This happens every time Cage is injured during training, and one day, Cage sees the Omega hiding inside a huge dam in the mountains. Now he and Vrataski come up with a step-by-step plan to get off the beach after the landing, but time after time, Rita ends up dead. Cage loses hope of success and gives it up. He escapes alone to London to get a drink in a bar. He manages to make it until the evening, but after humans are defeated, mimics get to Cage here as well. He has no choice but to get back to training and achieve the highest level of skill. His team locates the dam, and on their next attempt to get to the Omega, they manage to get to the trailer park and find the car. This isn't their first ride, and Cage tries to get Vrataski to talk about her personal life. He already knows a lot about her from past conversations, but the woman is very cold-hearted and doesn't like to talk. She hasn't come to terms with the loss of her loved one.
And I watched him die 300 times, and I remember every detail.
After a few hours, the exoskeletons run out of gasoline and energy. Leaving the suits in the field, they walk to the nearest farm. Behind the barn, they find a small helicopter, in which Vrataski wants to continue the journey. Cage hesitates, since neither of them know how to fly it. In addition, it turns out that Rita is seriously injured, although she was hiding it. Cage tends to her wounds, and suggests spending the night here. If they take off at sunset without weapons or suits, they will not succeed in their mission. William takes care of Rita, knowing her preferences all too well, and she realizes that this scenario has been repeated too many times. Cage has to confess that he found the keys and learned how to pilot the helicopter long ago, but every time they take off, Rita is killed by mimics hiding nearby. Rita demands not to waste precious time, gets into the cockpit, and starts the engine. This triggers an attack by the aliens, who crash the helicopter into the barn. Cage is wounded, and finishes the mimic off with an axe. Rita dies in his arms, revealing her real name, Rose. During another time loop, William approaches Rita as usual, but suddenly changes his mind about bringing her along. He puts on his suit, takes extra ammunition and a battery, and makes his way to the helicopter alone. Cage lands on the dam where the Omega is hiding. He sneaks deep inside the building, but finds only enemies that ambush him. One of them turns out to be a blue Alpha. Cage realizes that the mimics are trying to get more blood out of him before they kill him. To prevent them from carrying out their plan, he jumps into the water and drowns. William tells his companions that the visions have been a trap all along, and Rita lost her powers by falling into such a trap near Verdun. Rita realizes that the only way they can find the Omega is to use a prototype device invented by the Doctor. It can be used to tap into the alien's nervous system and trace the mastermind. To do this, you need to stick the device into an Alpha's body. But William's blood will also work. The Doctor was deemed crazy for such a breakthrough and subsequently fired from his job. The prototype remains at HQ in London, and the partners head there.
He'd be arrested at 10 feet from the front door. Psych ward dissection, remember?
After calculating their route down to the seconds, Rita and William enter General Brigham's office. The man is surprised to see Cage and his best soldier holding him at gunpoint and demanding to hear what they have to say. Cage demonstrates that he knows the future and talks about the aliens' ability to reset time. It took them many attempts to convince the stubborn general to give them the device. Shocked by their success, the partners leave the building, but they are intercepted by a cordon. Rita shoots back, while Cage stabs himself in the leg and leaves a deep cut. The man senses the Omega, which is under the Paris Louvre. But then their car collides with a soldier in an exosuit. Both lose consciousness after the collision. Cage wakes up in the hospital and sees that the nurse has already given him a blood transfusion. Cage is strapped to his bed and can't get out. Vrataski, who had escaped, appears and attempts to stab Cage in order to reset the day. William stops her by telling her that he has lost his powers. Now they have until morning to find and destroy the Omega in Paris. They will definitely need a dropship to do that.
Need more soldiers, too.
Now who's crazy enough to follow us to Paris?
J-Squad fits the description perfectly. Cage returns to the base, where, with the help of Vrataski, he convinces the soldiers to help them. They hijack a military dropship and head for Paris. Completing the suicide mission is challenging, because no Alpha can be eliminated without triggering a time reset. Just like during the last landing, the plane is attacked by missiles before it reaches its final destination. Few manage to land alive. Cage himself falls into the water and resurfaces, leaving his exoskeleton behind. The limping Cage is found by Rita. Other soldiers of the squad are disappointed that William knows nothing of the future, for this is a day he has never lived through. There are thousands of mimics between them and the Louvre, and Cage suggests activating the engines of the crashed dropship to propel it forward and cover the distance by driving it over the ground. Two soldiers sacrifice themselves to buy time for this plan to happen. The rest of the team are finished off by the mimics who caught up with the dropship. Vrataski and Cage are the only ones left alive. They crash into the glass pyramid that hides the Omega underneath. Both are wounded and have no exosuits, but they still shoot back at the aliens. As they make their way down to a flooded warehouse, they discover an extraterrestrial brain resting at the bottom. They hear Alphas approaching and argue over who will go next and who will distract the mimic blocking the way. Rita is in a better condition and assures Cage that she can draw the monster away. Besides, it's foolish to assume that any of them will make it out of here alive.
You're a good man, Cage. I wish I had the chance to know you better.
She kisses William goodbye and starts distracting the Alpha. Before she dies, she manages to give Cage time to dive under the water. He sees the Omega and pulls out explosives, but the Alpha catches up to him and pierces him with its tentacles. The explosives fall out of Cage's hands and plunge into the alien's brain. Cage is smiling because he managed to pull the pin out of each grenade. The Omega explodes, and all the mimics immediately drop dead. Cage's body sinks to the bottom, where the Omega's remains engulf his body. William's eyes turn black. He wakes up again in the helicopter, which is on its way to the general, but everything has changed. The news reports that the war is over. A burst of energy has been detected in the center of Paris, and the enemy army has been destroyed. Cage visits J-Squad at the base. All of his comrades are alive and well. He sees Rita training, as he has seen her do thousands of times before.
What do you want?
As always, you'll find the name of the movie in the video description. In the meantime, let us know in the comments, why do you think that after killing the Omega, Cage didn't wake up at the same moment of the day he always started with? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to see even more cool recaps.